Today's explainer. We are really strapping in for what reads like an absolute fast-paced historical thriller today. We're looking directly at the intense, blood-soaked, and highly politically charged events detailed in the biblical texts of 2 Kings chapters 9 and 10. It's an incredible story of divine mandates, sudden regime changes, and the really complex tension between executing justice and falling prey to personal ambition. Let's dive right into this narrative.
To get us grounded right from the start, we're going to follow the tradition of our source text and begin with this specific reading. Hello everyone, this is TN Inside. Let's begin by reading today's scripture passage from the book of 2 Kings, chapters 9 and 10. Okay, with that foundation set, let's look at how this grand historical sweep actually gets going.
The overarching theme here is resolution, driven by the passing of a massive prophetic baton. Step 1 is Elijah's unfinished work. Step 2, Elijah steps in to initiate things. And Step 3, it is ultimately Jehu who executes the plan. The divine mandate basically marches forward, transferring from prophet to prophet until it lands squarely on the shoulders of a military commander for the final decisive action.
Let me set the scene for you. King Joram of Israel is off recovering from an injury after defending the region of Gilead Ramoth against Syria. He leaves his commanders behind. Well, the prophet Elisha calls up one of his students, hands him a literal flask of oil, and sends him on this highly covert operation. The student finds Jehu, one of the commanders, pulls him into a secret back room, pours the oil on his head, and declares him the new king of Israel. Wild, right? Jehu walks back out, tells his fellow officers, and immediately they blow the trumpets and shout, "Jehu is king!" Just like that, a coup is born.
But listen, this wasn't just your standard political power grab. Jehu receives a very specific divine mandate. The hit list is clear. Strike down the house of King Ahab, avenge the blood of the Lord's servants, and specifically, execute the wicked Queen Jezebel. The mandate demands that Ahab's entire royal line be completely wiped out, made exactly like the fallen dynasties of Jeroboam and Baasha. We're talking about a total, uncompromising purge here.
And man, Jehu wastes absolutely zero time. Day 1 is just pure chaos. The text actually describes Jehu driving his chariot like a madman towards Jezreel, where the wounded King Joram is resting. Joram rides out to meet him alongside his visiting nephew, King Ahaziah of Judah. Joram asks, "Is it peace, Jehu?" And Jehu basically shoots back, "How can there be peace with all the idolatry of your mother Jezebel?" Joram yells treason and runs for it, but Jehu shoots him right between the shoulders. Ahaziah tries to flee too, but he's also shot and killed. And the day's not even over. Next up, Jezebel.
Now this next detail really highlights the incredible precision of this narrative. When Joram is killed, Jehu orders his body to be picked up and thrown into a very specific location, the field of Naboth. That's not random at all. Years earlier, Joram's parents, Ahab and Jezebel, had Naboth completely unjustly murdered just to steal his vineyard. Elijah prophesied that judgment would fall on that exact plot of dirt. So by leaving Joram's body there, Jehu is consciously and perfectly bringing closure to the Lord's long-standing prophecy.
Then we get to the final showdown with Queen Jezebel, and it is highly dramatic. Jehu rolls up to the city gates, and Jezebel is looking down from a window in full makeup, mocking him. She calls him Zimri. If you know the history, Zimri was a notorious traitor who assassinated his king and only lasted 7 days on the throne. She's taunting him, right? Predicting his quick downfall. But Jehu just looks up and yells, "Who is on my side?" A few eunuchs peek out, and on Jehu's command, they literally throw her out the window. Later on, when Jehu sends men out to bury her, they find that stray dogs have already eaten her body. All that's left are her skull, her feet, and her hands. It is a gruesome, gruesome end, but again, it happened exactly as Elijah foretold.
Now I want you to let this number sink in for a second. 70. That represents the number of Ahab's sons and descendants who are currently living over in the fortified city of Samaria. The old regime might be dead, but that royal family is still incredibly large. Jehu knows that to secure his new throne and to fully carry out his mandate, he can't leave any potential rivals alive.
So what does he do? He engages in pure psychological warfare. Jehu doesn't even march an army down to Samaria. Instead, he writes a challenging letter to the city's elders and the guardians of those 70 princes. He basically says, look, you have chariots, horses, and a fortified city. Pick the absolute best of Ahab's sons, put him on the throne, and come out and fight me. It's a massive, audacious bluff. The elders look at what he just did to 2 kings in a single day, and they are terrified. They surrender on the spot. So Jehu sends a second letter with a chilling demand. If you're really on my side, bring the heads of your master's sons to me tomorrow." They actually comply. All 70 princes are slaughtered, and their heads are brought to Jehu in baskets and piled up right at the city gates.
But the purge doesn't stop there. 42. On his way to Samaria, Jehu runs into a group of travelers. He asks who they are, and they happily reveal they're relatives of King Ahaziah of Judah. They're actually on their way to visit the royal family, totally oblivious to the violent coup that just happened. Because they're tied to Ahab's house through marriage, Jehu immediately orders them captured and killed. That's 42 more lives swept up in this massive cleansing. Once his political rivals are eliminated, Jehu turns his focus to religion, and he sets up what we can only call the Great Baal Trap. Notice the deception here. His stated intent, broadcast to the entire nation, is this: Ahab served Baal a little, Jehu will serve him much. He calls for a massive, mandatory assembly for every single prophet, priest, and worshiper of Baal. But his true intent is the total eradication of all of them. He packs them into one massive temple, makes absolutely sure there are no worshippers of the Lord inside, and then sends his guards in to strike down every last person.
Our source material actually pauses here to point out a really profound moral tension. On one hand, the goal to eradicate the worship of Baal, which Jezebel had deeply embedded in the nation, was considered righteous and aligned with God's will. But on the other hand, the method Jehu used was built on a massive, calculated lie. It forces us as readers to grapple with the justification of deceitful means to achieve righteous ends. We're watching a man driven by extreme zeal, but he's operating with deeply flawed worldly tactics.
And that brings us to the climax of the Purge, which reveals Jehu's ultimate tragic flaw. Look at the stark contrast. He absolutely decimated Baal worship. He killed the worshippers, dragged out and burned the wooden Asherah poles, and completely smashed the stone pillars of Baal. He even turned the temple into a latrine. But what did he keep? He deliberately kept the golden calves that had been set up generations earlier by King Jeroboam in the cities of Bethel and Dan. He stopped just short of complete obedience.
So you have to ask, why would a man who is so intensely zealous to destroy one idol turn around and protect another one? Well, it comes down to political compromise. Those golden calves weren't just religious symbols. They were a highly calculated political strategy. Jeroboam originally set them up so that people of the northern kingdom wouldn't travel down south to Jerusalem to worship at the true temple. Jehu is terrified that if his people went south to worship, their loyalties might shift back to the southern kingdom and he'd lose his brand new throne. Ultimately, the text tells us Jehu did not walk in the law of the Lord with all his heart. He put his own political security above his devotion to God.
Even with that massive flaw, the aftermath is fascinating. God is just, and he does acknowledge what Jehu did right. Because Jehu perfectly executed the judgment against Ahab's house, God promises that Jehu's dynasty will last for 4 generations. And Jehu goes on to rule over Israel for a staggering 28 years. The overarching takeaway from our source text here is so powerful, no matter how chaotic the political landscape becomes, and no matter how deeply flawed the human leaders are, God's sovereignty continuously marches on.
I want to leave you with something to really think about today. We've just watched Jehu's incredible zeal right alongside his fatal compromise. If God maintains his sovereignty even through deeply flawed leaders who prioritize their own agendas, we kind of have to look in the mirror. What golden calves are we keeping around? What compromises are we justifying in our own lives right now simply for our own personal, professional, or political gain? It's a profound tension that has survived the centuries, and honestly, it speaks to us just as clearly today. Thanks so much for joining me to walk through this incredible explainer.